And we are live. Here we go, guys. Here we go. I've been gone for forever. It feels like. Feels like I have been gone for way too long. Right? Feels like I've been gone for way too long. I took the week off. I went and said hello to my mom and my sister. Compton, first one in, my man. Congratulations. You did it, bud. You did it. You did it. Congratulations. Congratulations to you, my man. I got to spend time with my sister and with my mom. It was a really, really, really beautiful time. It was a really, really beautiful thing. I feel like I learned a lot of lessons. I feel like I learned a lot of stuff. I feel like I learned some things. Ligon to Z, good to see you, my man. Good to see you, my man. It's been a minute. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is like, I have been running on the assumption for a while now that everyone kind of agrees. There's a consensus, right? We all sort of agree that the CIA is involved in lots of stuff, right? We all agree, huh? The CIA is involved in a lot of crazy stuff, right? Well, apparently there are still a lot of people out there who are skeptical of this narrative, who are holding on to the old idea that, like, you think the CIA is manipulating our media? You're insane! Even though we, like, literally have, like, confessions straight up, like, the Church Commission, former CIA agents essentially confessing openly in front of all of us that, yeah, the CIA, what it does is it plants stories in, like, surrogate places. It plants stories on blogs, and it plants stories on, like, it plants stories in its own organizations. It literally puts people into organizations in order to create false narratives. And then it has more respected organizations use those stories as citations in larger stories, right? This is what the CIA does. They're pretty black and white. They've confessed to it. They've admitted it. They talk about it. We know all about it. Operation Mockingbird exists. And yet there are still people out there that if you're like, yeah, like when you're reading Wikipedia, make sure you take a look at the source, because chances are good that the source is going to be the CIA saying, yeah, Stalin killed 100 bajillion people. Well, what's your source? Well, the American Heritage Association. That sounds legitimate. President is like former CIA spook. Just ridiculous. Yeah, just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. So that's the big lesson, is that if I'm going to be talking about the CIA, I've got to be like, okay, like I got to be a little bit more aware that there are still huge sections of the public that are like, what? You mean this $1 trillion organization that spreads dissemination and admits to spreading dissemination into the society is spreading dissemination? You're a madman. I'm like completely resigned to the idea that we're going to watch the society go into a real tailspin, into a real major decline in a serious, serious way. And I'm doing everything I can to try to be a little light, shine my little light into the world, and be a little light in the world, and to say to people, hey, there's another way, there's another thing that we can do, that we could make demands of the power structure, that we could, like, all get together and basically say, like, hey, food and shelter should be free, right? We should do that. We should do that. But for whatever reason, we here in society have basically just decided that we should be owned by owners, and that makes sense. It makes sense that we're owned by owners, and it's fine. But, you know, I'm just one man trying to make it happen. Compton writes, saw a post on my apartment BB that is asking us to all join the City Tenants Union. Do it. Do it, Compton. Do it. Do it now. While you're listening to this live stream, this podcast, whatever you want to call this, just while it's happening right now, bring up the thing, do the thing, put your name in, do it. Join that union. Do it. I believe in you. You can do it. I am rooting for you and all unions and all tenant organizations out there. So, speaking of decline, I think it's super important for us to start with feet on the ground. Recent polling from Canada. Mainstream poll modeled. So there's been a mainstream poll, right? If the election was held today, you have a conservative majority of 26 seats. Every single time the Conservatives, the Canada has been polled in the last year, it's been swinging further and further and further to the right. Jay Perez, good to see you, my man. Yeah, look at this beard. Mikhail, absolute pleasure to see you, Mikhail. Jay, I mean, yeah, look at this beard, eh? It's happening. This is a true communist beard, right? This is how you know that I'm legit. This is how you know that we're serious here, goddammit. That this is serious communism talk happening here. No bullshit. You're getting the straight skinny from your man, JS. This is true communism right here. Yeah. Anybody who is telling you that they're a communist but they don't have a beard as glorious as this, nonsense. Nonsense. They are the weak. They are the weak communist. They're probably a CIA spook trying to lead you down the path. Right? That's why we're ending up with all these people who are like, I'm a socialist. I'm a democratic socialist. Well, look at their beard, right? It's usually this wispy nonsense, right? They're trying, God bless them. They're trying, but they're not there. If they committed fully to the glory of communism, then suddenly their beard would just be like, that's what I should start saying. Lots and lots of people comment on my beard. Almost every day, I get, I would say on average, I get 4 people comment on my beard. And what I should probably start saying is I should just say to them, I should be like, yeah, I'm a communist. They should be like, whoa, dude, sick beard. And I should be like, yeah, I'm a communist. Become a communist, get a good beard. Those are the rules. Those are the rules. Become a communist, sick beard. They follow. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Well, you take a look at Marx, you take a look at Engels, right? Sick beards. Just sick beards, right? Like, the Russian crew didn't have, like, the sick beards going on, but they were, like, trimming up pretty good. Good facial hair. Good, strong facial hair. Lots of strong facial hair amongst communists. Yeah, but Lenin, he kept it tight, right? He was doing something very specific, right? So I'll take it back a little bit. Good facial hair. Right? Strong facial hair. Yeah, Jay. Unfortunately, I think some people, they just don't have the genetics. They just don't have it. Simple as that. I mean, I'm not even trying to grow this beard, dude. It just comes in. Like, it's simple as that. I gotta maybe add some civilization to this beard. This beard's a little on the wild side, but I want to see what happens. I want to see where this thing goes, right? How big is this going to get? This is only after like a year and a couple of months, right? This isn't that, like, I'm like maybe a year and 2 months out. So what's year 2 look like? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Here in Canada, right, we are looking at a situation where the Conservatives are going to take power, probably with a large majority, right? That Canadians are rightfully furious, absolutely furious at our government. Here is something that Justin Trudeau actually said on August 28th, right? This smacks really loudly of let them eat cake, a real, like, we should be pat on the back kind of situation. Justin Trudeau says on August 28th, from increasing the Canada Child Benefit, a policy that Conservatives put in, to cutting childcare costs, to eliminating interest on Canada's student loans, we're working to make life more affordable for Canadians. And as kids across the country get ready to head back to school, we'll continue to do that work. From all Canadians, right, on behalf of every single Canadian alive, I would like to say to you, Mr. Trudeau, go fuck yourself. Yeah. I think I can say that pretty confidently. Even the people who are like, I'm voting Liberal to keep those Conservatives at bay. Shut up, Trudeau. This is super embarrassing. The Trudeau administration, I think, is somewhat resigned to the idea that they're going to get completely destroyed in the next election. They basically exist at this stage in the game to facilitate the extraction of wealth from the society. That's pretty fundamental. That's pretty much fundamentally what's going on now here in Canada is that we're just watching the capitalist class extract as much wealth as it possibly can from the society to burn out the political capital of the politicians who are currently in power so that its next wave of political of power structure can come in, right? So in this case, Justin Trudeau is burning out his political capital on behalf of the capitalist class and will be out of office by the next election and then go work for some capitalist institution somewhere as a reward for his service to capital. And then Pierre Poilievre will come in. And then Pierre Poilievre will begin the journey of political power under capital, which is beginning with hope and goodwill and everybody going like, yeah, we got rid of Trudeau, we got rid of the guy, we got rid of the surrogate of capital and put in another surrogate of capital and things will be different. Yeah. And for a minute, for just like a moment, the capitalists will actually play ball, right? Because the capitalists understand that this is a game and we've got to make sure that the ball passes back and forth. And so just for a moment, the capitalists will like plane things out a little bit just to give the appearance that electing Pierre Poilievre was meaningful. And the populists will, you know, be like, okay, let's let Pierre work. And then they'll all go back to work, right? Because Pierre's got this and Pierre's getting in and he's going to do a kind of thing. And then a year or two will pass. Nothing will have changed. And in fact, the degeneration of the society will continue. Because the capitalists are not going to give things back, and the conservatives are not going to ask them to give anything back. And then the anger and resentment will begin. People will be like, oh, Pierre, he betrayed us. And then some liberal will show up, right, and just be like, hi there, everybody, I'm a liberal. It's the liberals are back again. Yep, here we are, liberals. And then everybody will vote liberal again, right, because that's what we do. And maybe it's possible that the next round it'll be like the NDP, but that's just another liberal party at this point. And the ball will just get passed back and forth. And I'm really seeing this kind of dynamic of people fooling themselves about what this election is going to look like. Eric, absolute pleasure to see you, my man. Good to see you. I see it happening an awful lot. People are heartfelt. People are meaningful. Like they really do understand that something's going really, really wrong for Canadians and for Canada. Like people understand this. There's less of this narrative of get a job. The get a job narrative has actually gone away. That it really is like, oh, liberals, fucking liberals. Like there's finally this acknowledgement. Like if you are going to stand around and tell people that the problem is you, then you're a psycho. And even conservatives are beginning to understand that if you stand around pointing at other people saying the problem is you amidst this obvious, overt, crazy crisis that we're going in, then you're a psycho. So they've shifted to be like, oh no, the trouble is liberals. Ignoring completely that, no, the trouble is capital, as always. Mr. Moon, good to see you, my man. But here's something that got written, and I thought it was quite poignant, and you guys know me, right? I am here to give voice to those who do not get a voice. I am trying to spread the experience of the working class and the experience of the average citizen into the society in order to be genuine about what we're doing here, right? Like I want to tell the truth about what is happening in our society and get and peel the fingers of the narrative, peel the capitalist fingers off of the narrative. I left the country on a whim last October for a job opportunity in California on a TN visa, accepted a full-time permanent position, I was a contractor before, and returned home to renew my TN visa at the Canada-US border. I spent 2 weeks back home in Ontario visiting family and friends. It just seems that everyone is under incredible strain and is starting to reel in stress. Things were getting bad last October, but it seems to have gotten significantly worse. The media stories of a cost of living crisis is most definitely playing out in real time, but it seems to be near catastrophe levels. Everyone I spent time with is having a hard time making ends meet in some capacity. And the worst part is that all of them have what would be considered middle or upper class careers. My sister, for example, works as a police officer, Between her one-bedroom condo rental, groceries, utility, and car payments, there's apparently very little left over. My brother and his wife both have good jobs and income, but can hardly make ends meet with 2 children. His kids are starting to absorb the stress. My best friend, who is a dental hygienist, whose husband works in a factory, desperately wants to start to have children, but says she can't even consider it at the moment. They're stuck renting a 2-bedroom. Her stepson lives with them. Shithole for $2,300 a month with little room. They can't even consider upsizing or buying anything. Apparently, it's starting to cause a lot of tension and fighting in their marriage. If Canadians with good careers are feeling the pressure, how the fuck are people on minimum wage surviving? My heart hurts thinking about it. A family friend works at Tim Hortons and is basically broke. After paying the rent on her 1-bedroom, roach-infected apartment, there's only $100 to $200 a month for groceries. I would say about half of my high school friends, now 26 to 23, are still living at home. I can't quite explain it, but the vibe and overall dynamic has changed. Cost of living is beyond just straining people at this point. It's causing toxic stress. I left thinking that I could never see myself returning to Canada long term, yet I feel incredibly guilty. Even in California, life is much more affordable. First comment, it's the worst I've ever seen. I don't know how we'll ever recover from this mess. And of course, second comment, and with all due respect, I understand people want better lives, but close the borders already. Right? So, I do want to take a little moment. Like, I'm trying really hard to be a nice guy these days, right? I'm trying hard to have a heart of compassion and understanding and forgiveness. That's where I'm trying to come from a lot of the time. But I really do got to say, I fucking told you guys. Like, I've been saying it for 10 years. I've been saying it for a long, long time. I've been saying it for a long, long, long time, right? This has been the experience of people who are working at the minimum wage. This has been the experience of people who've been working in the service industry for decades. That the only reason it's becoming a problem now is because it's starting to affect cops, starting to affect, like, professional careerists, right? It's starting to affect people who have the quote-unquote good jobs, right? That if you're just a dumb burger flipper, go get a job, right? Well, what if I started telling these people just get a better job, right? Oh, you just need to invest your money better. This is a finance issue, right? What would that sound like to you? Well, that's what you guys have been saying to us all along, right? But it's okay. I forgive you. I understand, right? I understand. You've been living in a place of luxury. You've been living in a position of privilege for your whole fucking lives, right? Now that it's affecting you, it's a problem. I get it, right? And with that said, it is a problem. Right? So it is a problem, right? That we do have to come together and we do have to tackle this and we do have to look at it. The issue, of course, is that with stories like this happening, what are the populists doing? Let's vote conservative. Let's go. Let's vote conservative. Let's take the group of people who historically doubled down on capital. Let's take the group of people whose extremist elements in the party are literally saying, we are going to sell ourselves to capital harder, that's the solution. That the solution is to sell ourselves to capital harder. These are the people who are about to take power. It's an awful lot like saying the way to put out a forest fire is to throw gas on it. Good to see you, Midnight Rose. I didn't stream last week, so Radio Halifax, good to see you. I didn't stream last week, so that's probably why you didn't tune in, right? Jay writes, buddy at work had a Canada tat on his arm when I started. He was proud. Just noticed recently he's got some scribbles tattooed on top of it. Yeah. I'm a single dude paying $1,600 a month for a 1-bedroom. Hey, Jay, you and me, we got so much in common, goddammit. I'm like 1 inch away from getting a roommate. I'm so close to getting a roommate, and he's somebody I know. I think he's going to be a good fit. He understands my situation. I think he's going to be pretty accommodating. I'm not going to bullshit him about what's happening in the space and all that kind of stuff. But boy, if I can get a roommate in here, holy cow, that's game changer, you guys. Getting a roommate in here is actually a game changer. It fundamentally changes my position and how I'm going to feel financially. It actually means that I'm going to go from like just eking it, just making it, which is where I'm at right now, just sort of making it. You know, I'm happy to have a little bit of money socked away, right? I'm happy to kind of have that kind of thing, to actually having a little bit of spending money, actually going to be able to maybe travel, maybe go back to Manitoba, maybe see my family, right? Like those sorts of things. I am in the position, here's something that I'm coming to understand, right? I am watching people go through the journey that I took when I was 30. So about 10 years ago, I just came to terms with the fact that I was going to be living a poor life. I just came to terms with the fact that I was going to be living in a very minimalist, small-scale kind of existence. And I just came to terms with that, and that I was not going to get the big job or have the big house or any of that kind of stuff. And and so now I'm just happy that I'm stable living in Toronto. And but what I'm watching now is I'm watching people who should have houses. Like, I'm watching people who should have a house. There's no reason they shouldn't. Like, there's just no reason. People who are like professionals, teachers, librarians, literal university professors, lawyers, right? They should have houses, and it's absurd that they don't. It's absurd that they don't. And the narrative being, oh, there's too many immigrants. What a joke. What a joke. There's a small group of billionaires hoarding all the housing. That's what's going on, and it's really, really obvious. So I'm happy to be streaming, and I'm happy to be here to walk people through an acceptance of living life in poverty, or living life, if not in poverty, sort of living a simpler life. Living a simpler life, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a life of dignity. It's you can finally let go of the expectations of capital. You can let go of the internalizations of capital. You can stop defining yourself based on productivity. You can stop defining yourself based on productivity and start defining yourself based on how you treat others and the goodness that you bring into the world. Or you could simply just go out into a field and stare at the sky and just enjoy that time for what it is and not worry so much about what's going to come next, because it's out of your hands. That you can just live a simple life and be a simple person, and there's dignity in it. And you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And that to me is one of the largest crimes of capital, is that it somehow made us ashamed of living a simple life, of simply wanting a quiet existence, reading a book, drinking some tea, going out and doing a job, a simple task that the society asks of us or requires of us. Somehow that's been demonized. The idea of living a quiet life, that the hobbits from Lord of the Rings would be shameful in this capitalist society. Well, I think that's a shame. I think that's a shame. Because a quiet life, a simple life, is a life well lived. And if that's your ambition, your life's ambition is to simply enjoy the time you've got without intruding on anyone, then that puts you a cut above these capitalists, I say. Simple as that. Yeah, my first one-bedroom apartment back in 2012 was $600 a month. Yeah, that's the same situation I've been in that situation for a long time. Like, what's happening now is absurdity. It's simple. Simply put, it's absurdity. It's grotesque. And if anybody was to stand in front of me and try to say that this is okay, I would think that person is an absolute ghoul. Just an absolute ghoul. And they exist, certainly. They vote conservative. Mr. Moon writes, thanks for reading that. I always like to hear personal narratives that cut through the bullshit. Yeah, and it's good to see that on like that kind of narrative, right? This that I just read from, this is a far-right subreddit. Like this Canada sub, I don't want to describe it as far-right, but it definitely has like libertarian far-right people in it. That it's not easy to have good conversations about the nature of capital on this subreddit, and I subscribe to it simply because of that reason. I'm here so that I can see the perspective of people who are my ideological enemies and who are opposed to me. And if this kind of narrative is gaining a lot of traction, that reaffirms something that I've been saying for quite some time, that even the right now is beginning to acknowledge that there is something that has gone wrong. And I can see them struggling with the idea. And of course, what are the answers that they're reaching? Immigration. That's a big one. That's a big answer that they're reaching to, is immigration is a problem. We got to do something about these immigrants. That's a big problem. Seraphim, good to see you. Absolute pleasure. Immigration, big problem, right? Close the border. Stop letting immigrants in here. We should be taking care of our own first. These sorts of narratives are taking hold. The WEF, there's another good one, right? It's Trudeau and his WEF buddies, right? But if you actually bring up the system of capital, if you actually bring up the structure, the economic structure of the society that we live in, they don't even engage anymore. They don't even talk to you. They're not interested, right? And if they do talk to you, it is of that get a job sort of tone. And the solutions they're coming up with are just work harder, right? Sell yourself better. You just need to reinvest into the system of capital harder, even though it's fairly obvious that the system of capital is what's responsible for what's happening to us. That the system of capital is generating these issues in the first place and will continue to generate these issues. And it can't come up with solutions, because the solution that is right in front of our face, that is really obvious, is that the people who have all of the resources, the people who are living in this position, like the people who could literally shoot themselves into space, like come on. We're living in a situation now where we have watched several times the billionaire class shoot themselves into space, right? There's no secret here. There's no secret to what the solution actually is. It's just that people are unwilling to commit to the reality of what it'll mean to actually get these resources out of these psychopaths' hands, right? People don't want to admit it. That you might get people to stand up and actually say, tax the rich, right? Tax the rich, right? Tax the rich. You'll hear that. People will say that. Jagmeet Singh says that, right? The Democrats say that. Tax the rich. Oh, okay, super duper. They're not going to accept that, right? So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? In good news, always worth talking about some good news, right? Always good to talk about good news. Marxist teacher, this is from Fox News. Let's all revel in the ridiculousness of Fox News. Marxist teacher who called for forceful cultural revolution lands seat on state legislature. A Marxist teacher from Colorado who called for a forceful, in all caps, cultural revolution against whiteness was voted in by Democrats to fill an open state House of Representatives seat Saturday. Tim Hernandez was selected as a state representative for the Denver area on Saturday by a committee of Democrats tasked with filling the vacant seat after its incumbent, Serena Gonzalez, Gutierrez was elected to the Denver City Council. Hernandez worked at Aurora West Preparatory Academy in the Aurora Public Schools District, according to its website from May. Their staff list has since been scrubbed, and it was unclear if he continues to work in the Colorado District. A sign in his classroom called for dismantling white systems. Fox News Digital previously found that Hernandez went on a Marxist diatribe at a protest organized by unions. I want to tear up some shit up it out for you. I want to tear some shit up it out for you. Are you ready? I think that they probably misquoted him. Hernandez said, what I think is happening in our schools, what I think is showing up in my classroom is a lot of the things that we get into ideological circles up here. We like to compete. Who knows Marx better? Who knows these things better? Who's a Leninist? Listen, all right? I'll give you a real take on this. Kids don't care, he said. It wasn't enough to preach the communist theory. It had to be put into practice, according to Hernandez. Yes, it's important to know theory, but you have to do some practices. You have to get out into the streets. You have to get into your workplace. You have to go to your families. If we are just sitting talking in an ideological circle, our kids are still going to schools that are underfunded, where they are investing more in their future than in their success. This guy sounds like a Canadian commie watcher. Your communist theory will not save you. The revolution will happen in the hood. It will not be led by who understands Lenin best. It will not be led by the deepest Marxists. The revolution will be led by the people, and I say this because I'm a teacher. Fox News Digital also probed into Hernandez's public social media and found the teacher called for a forceful cultural revolution, particularly against American whiteness and white supremacy. He had signaled that he was including lessons on communist theory in his classroom. What a baller. For example, to engage young children in his lens of society, Hernandez said they should be shown the movie A Bug's Life, followed by a lesson on a proletariat revolution, meaning a social revolution in which the working class attempts to overthrow the bourgeoisie. A lot of people call me a unicorn. I am not an anomaly. I am a testament to the work we still have to do. This is sacred. This is powerful. This is necessary. I tell my students the truth, he said, according to his notes from a Memphis rally in September 2021, which was reviewed by Fox News. If white people spent half of the time they spent trying to distance themselves from their whiteness, and instead spent it actually deconstructing systems of white supremacy, where would we be? He asked. Systems of white supremacy are upheld by individuals. To remove individuality from this conversation is unproductive. I am absolutely advocating for a cultural revolution where we dismantle individual and systemic white supremacy, he said in January 2021. We're talking about whiteness and white supremacy, and I'm willing to advocate for any form of disruption to it and every manifestation it has, he said. Am I denying the freedom to uphold white supremacy? If so, I am in favor of that denial. And white supremacy is currently upheld by force. So yes, I'm advocating a forceful cultural revolution wherein we assert the dignity of life for all at the expense of white supremacy. Hernandez's classroom was filled with flags supportive of the Palestinian and far-left political causes, including one that suggested the United States of America belonged to the Aztecs. Hernandez was previously fired at another school in Denver Public Schools after being called aggressive, divisive, and attacking by school's administrator, he said in a tweet. Oh yeah, McCarthyism, right? The phrase cultural revolution is derived from communist totalitarian history. The Chinese Cultural Revolution was a political purge and persecution of millions of suspected anti-revolutionaries, monarchists, right, imperialists, orchestrated by Mao, who was the chairman of the People's Republic of China from 1949 to 1976. The violent movement vehemently opposed the four olds, old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits, and featured the destruction of cultural artifacts. God, they're such Nazis, eh? Hernandez also said white people need to be subject to re-education. How long are we going to have to wait for white people to grow and unlearn? Because to be honest, having to wait for the group in our society that has the slightest education levels, most economic power, and highest political capital to grow seems like BS to me, he said on X. On another occasion, Hernandez blasted white women. I seriously question if white women even remotely notice the number of times they interrupt other people in a day, he said. He has also commented about the racial dynamics of teaching, blasting the profession for being 80% white. 80% of the teachers are white because the education system wants them to be, and they choose to promote the oppression their equity departments try and fail to dismantle, he said. Hernandez in the Aurora Public School District did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Man, I wish that communism and communists were as badass as our opponents made us out to be, right? Like, it's just like they're constantly making us look good, and like the only people who could read an article like that and be like, gasp and golly gee, goodness me, would be like fascists and Nazis, right? You're like reading this being like, yeah, this sounds awesome. We should do all of those things. Yeah, that sounds great. I love this. Published August 28th, 2023, 4 a.m. How much do you want to bet that Hannah Grossman requested for a comment at like 5 p.m. August 27th? They didn't immediately respond, so this is okay to publish. Because we're a credible news organization that definitely didn't go to the Supreme Court to justify our lying to the public. Hey, Supreme Court, is it okay if we continue lying? And the Supreme Court's like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's a reasonable position to hold. That's what free speech is all about. If you can't lie to people on a massive scale and spread propaganda into the system, are you really a free country? Because good speech beats bad speech, Doesn't matter if you got $100 billion funneling over the airwaves. That doesn't matter. Irrelevant. Good speech beats bad speech. That's how this actually works. Yep. Certainly has nothing to do with who has the most money and access, who controls the airwaves. None of that matters. Nope. Good speech. That's what does it. Yeah, we need to protect this man at all costs. Yeah, how much you want to bet that suddenly this guy's going to have some kind of like car accident? Right? There's going to be some kind of unfortunate situation that happened with this guy. Oh, yeah, It'll be like suddenly Prigozhin's plane goes down and everybody's just like, what could have possibly happened? Yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think with the Prigozhin situation? I know what I think, right? I don't have the evidence. That's the thing about the Prigozhin situation. It's just very, very simple, very straightforward. Looks like a mob hit. Just saying, if it looks like a mob hit, if it sounds like a mob hit, if it's timed like a mob hit, maybe it's a mob hit. Like maybe it's Putin pulling the trigger on that, right? I don't have the document. I don't have the confession, but it definitely looks that way. Yeah, these guys called Biden a Maoist. That's hilarious. What Fox News called Marxist may not necessarily be what we see as Marxist, by the way. Yeah, this guy's definitely ravioli bolognese. Ravioli says we need the Black Panthers back. Yeah, that'd be nice. The trouble is that they're arresting those guys, right? That's what's happening. The reason why we don't have a Black Panther Party and the reason why the Black Panthers can't come back is because they're all in jail. Right? Maybe there is like a significant amount of people in America who are actually in favor of forming up some kind of like Black Panther Party, but they're all in prison. And that's the strategy, more or less, right? It's just disrupt black neighborhoods, round people up, arrest them, put them in prisons. This is the thing that doesn't get any play in our media, right? Doesn't get any play whatsoever. Is that like we are actually just randomly incarcerating people. Like the incarceration system that exists in America, if that was happening in the USSR, if that was happening in China, it would be the only thing that we would ever talk about. It would be literally the only thing we would ever talk about. That cops will just pull up on the street, grab people, and put them into cars and charge them with crimes. Like, if you read Matt Taibbi's The Divide, he goes through this in painstaking detail. In my view, it's the reason why the media system went so hard against Matt Taibbi, is because he exposed the reality of the United States incarceration system and the arbitrary nature of it. And I've read articles on this stream about people who will be just taken and abandoned in prisons and they won't be able to get out. Right? That they won't be able to see a judge. They won't be able to see. They literally won't be able to leave the prison, and they haven't been charged with anything. They're just there. Like, this is the reality of the United States incarceration system, and they are using it without a doubt on purpose to destroy movements like the Black Panthers. Like, absolutely, they're doing that. And so, where are the Black Panthers? In jail. Right? That's what's going on. And in my view, that's just a black and white position. I think that if you stood up and were trying to make the argument that that's not what was happening, I think you'd just be Looney Tunes. You'd basically just be admitting that you don't know what's going on. Rose writes, before last week I was on vacation. So it's been a minute, Rose. It's been a minute. Well, I'm glad to have you here. I'm so glad that you guys are here, man. Like, it makes me feel so good to know that there are people actually listening to this. Good opportunity, as always. Like, share, subscribe. Good evening, DJ. Yo-Yo Gaming, absolute pleasure. Subscribe, maybe. Tinker, I've got a nice influx of guys all of a sudden. Real good opportunity to say like the stream, hit the bells, hit the whistles, hit the buttons. Do everything that you can to spread the thing around. Clip it, send it. If you hear something you like, let me know. Maybe I'll even clip it myself. I got a Patreon on the stream if you'd like to donate $1. If you're only donating $1, maybe make it $2, right? It makes me feel good when people donate to the Patreon, all that kind of stuff. More importantly than anything else, tell other people about me. Let other people know about what's going on and to spread this around, because word of mouth is still, for those of you who think that telling people or doing all that kind of stuff is not effective, right? Word of mouth is still the number one form, even in this digital world, even in this internet world, even in this highly regulated digital landscape. Word of mouth is still the number one way to spread information. It's still the number one way to advertise. That if you can get people talking about it, that spreads it faster than anything else. So if you really want to help me out, let somebody know that I exist. Real simple, real straightforward stuff. Real glad you guys are here. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. White abolitionist greater than Marxism. Yeah, I mean, let's define, like, I can't imagine, like, a more dim position than, hey, I have a skin color. I'm going to define my entire personality based on that. Like, I can't imagine anything more dim than that. Eric writes, John, have you seen the video that was made by the Democrats where they use MTG commentary that made Biden sound like a genius? Oh, man, that'd be some really fancy editing to make Biden sound like a genius. Like, poor Biden, man. He's just not here, right? Yeah, they got Eddie again. I saw that. That's what, time number 8, right? They're going really hard now on communists. Like, if you have any communist leaning, if you have any kind of thing, I haven't really been paying attention to TikTok. And when I got banned off TikTok, there was like a small guard of people who were trying to be on TikTok, still doing it. It won't be too much longer until it's just literally if you start saying the word, if you start doing anything, like you can't have the word communism or commie or Marxist in your name. Right? It's like they're going after it harder than they're going after porn right now. Like it's really obvious. Like you really got to be kind of dim-witted to not to think that, oh yeah, no, it's a free speech. It's a free speech environment. It's a free speech environment, you know. Free speech. That's definitely it. Space Orc. I'm sure Space Orc is going to say something really clever here on Twitch. I want to take other people's money. Let's make my entire identity around that. I mean, you are a Space Orc after all. So, honest. Right? That's an honest position, Space Orc. Oh my god. Mikhail, that's a sweet thing to say. Missed you a bit last week. That's great. DJ had a shitty day at work. Fuck capitalism. I'm sorry to hear that, my man. The best advice I can offer you is just get a good night's sleep. Just get a good night's sleep, my man. I know that that's like the lamest advice ever, but it's advice that I have given myself, and I'm following my own advice, and my days are better. Even when it's shitty, even when everybody shows up late and I have to do twice the amount of work and everything's awful, well, I had a good night's sleep. Everything's great. Thanks, Radio. I appreciate that, bud. Yeah, did you hear that American vets are coming back to Vietnam? Yes, I did. I was actually tempted to show that article. But I decided not to, Yo-Yo Gaming. But seeing as you've brought it up, yeah, Americans are getting free health care. Like, American veterans are moving to Vietnam in order to get free health care and a higher standard of living. And the Vietnamese are welcoming them in with open arms. It's actually a really wild story from a lot of levels, right? Like, imagine being the guy that went to Vietnam to kill Vietnamese people, and then coming home to America, essentially being abandoned by your own government and your own people, and then realizing that, hey, you know where I could go in order to live a better quality of life? Vietnam. because a lot of these guys, like, they probably know people in Vietnam, right? You know, you spend like 5 years in Vietnam, you probably get to know some people. You probably came home, and then you get talking with some of those guys who are back in Vietnam, right? So some of the people you knew, some of the Vietnamese you knew, and the Vietnamese are like, yeah, like, our government gives us free land, and we get in a situation. You can watch Luna Oyas content, right? Yeah, Uncle Iroh in the Earth Kingdom type shit. Like, we're really watching sort of this concession from the capitalist empire, right? That its citizens themselves are just beginning to concede that, like, yeah, this isn't working. The project of America is not working, and it is beginning to fray at the edges. I recently, and I say fray at the edges because I recently listened to Vijay Prashad's book, Washington Bullets, which is a brief history of the CIA and coups across America. Really good, concise listening. It's about 5 hours to listen to the whole thing, but gives you a really concise history of American imperialism, especially delving into the post-70s, I think is really good, and getting into, like, what happened in Venezuela, these sorts of stories, the African coups, the assassination of Thomas Sankara, right? It really gives you, like, a bullet points of the familiar stories that we all kind of know, with that we as Marxists and as communists know, but that others don't necessarily know. It doesn't delve too deeply into Cuba because most people, I feel, know the Cuban sort of story more or less. Getting into more what happened in Africa throughout that time period. And his argument about what's going on with BRICS and what's going on with this kind of stuff is that this is a beginning of an organizing against capital, but it isn't the death of capital. That capital will reorient itself. But my position is more or less that capital will be defeated from within. Because it's its own citizens that will have to come up and rise up against it. It's its own citizens that will eventually come to see that they are being victimized by the system of capital. And it's its own citizens that are going to actually have to fight back against it. Yeah, DJ, there used to be so much Marxist comment, I never see it anymore. Yeah, that's on purpose, right? TikTok was, at one point, owned by Chinese companies. And of course those Chinese companies are going to be pro-Marxist-Leninist, right? Because the Chinese government is pro-Marxist-Leninist and has actually mandated a certain amount of Marxist-Leninist content on a lot of their platforms. They want to spread Marxist-Leninism around because that's the foundation that they've built their society on, and they want to continue doing that because they see it as useful and good for their own people, and so they want to spread the gospel, so to speak. But there was under Trump, TikTok, they forced TikTok to be sold to an American company, and there's an American company by the name of Oracle that owns the servers, and the servers are in California. And then the people that they put in charge of TikTok are former NATO operatives, right? So you have, like, NATO people from an organization that was put into power and was created in the first place to dismantle the Soviet Union, right? To be an anti-communist force in the first place. And these are the people who are in charge of TikTok. Like, what do you think they're going to do? Like, what do you think they're going to do? It's pretty straightforward what they're going to do. Right? It's and so I was never surprised by it. I was sort of sad when it happened. I was bummed when it happened to me. And then when I tried to start recreating it, I was sad that it wasn't going to happen. But I mean, I've been saying since the beginning, this is inevitable, guys. This is inevitable. Like, I will eventually be banned on YouTube. It will happen. They will take this stuff down. It's going to happen. Right? And that's an excellent reason why you should be donating to the Patreon, even $1. It gets you into the Discord, so that should that happen, should I get pulled off of Twitch, should I get pulled off of YouTube, should I get pulled off of these places, I shouldn't even say should, when I get pulled off of these platforms, you'll be able to find me. We'll be able to continue organizing, and I'll be able to continue doing what I'm doing and continue connecting, right? Even if I have to do it through just like a Discord call, like, if that's what it comes down to, if I have to do this on a Discord call, if I have to do this on a Zoom call or something, I'm going to continue doing this because they are going to do everything they can to kill these messages and kill this message. They're going to do everything they can to do it, and I refuse. They will literally have to kill me to get me to stop doing this. And even if they do, they cannot kill the message that our job is to keep the light alive and to keep the light shining into the world. That's the job, is to make it so that everybody can get food and shelter and all of our basic needs are taken care of, and that there isn't this looming threat constantly of starvation and homelessness held against us and held over our heads. That the removal of this class dynamic, the removal of this dynamic in our society is our express and explicit goal, because it is for the betterment of all humankind. In my view, whether it happens today, tomorrow, 100 years from now, or 1,000 years from now, it is inevitable that eventually the force of humanity will simply demand that it be done. Because we will come to understand that each of us are just randomly generated into this world. We didn't ask to be here. Nobody asked to be here. We have very few demands actually placed upon us by the universe, right? Eat, reproduce. Really, that's it. Like, eat, drink, don't die to exposure. Right? Don't get randomly killed by something else that exists here. It's not a lot. And by and large, we've created a system as a people. We've created a system that really takes care of a lot of it. Right? We produce so much food, we throw away 40% of our food. Right? We've created water systems to ensure that we always have clean water. That we have water treatment plants to make sure that we get rid of bacteria and we make things safe. So food, water, we've built all of this shelter. It's all here. Basic maintenance is all that's required, right? And instead of just saying to each other, okay, we've got this food system, we've got this water system, we've got this shelter system, we've got our necessities taken care of. We've really got our necessities taken care of. And instead of looking at one another and saying, okay, good, we have access to these things. Now what? What do we do with the brief amount of time that we're here as the temporary creatures that were randomly spawned in? What do we do? Well, let's come up with some nice ideas. Let's just enjoy the time that we have here. Let's enjoy each other. Instead of saying that, what have we done? We've given the systems of food generation and water generation and shelter, we've given the systems to a small group of insane psychopaths who withhold those things from us in exchange for our labor in order to enslave us. Very straightforwardly. And we have become compliant. We've become complacent. They have erected systems, quote-unquote education systems, to render us completely complacent and completely compliant to this arrangement that we all just sort of shrug and say, yeah, it makes sense that we throw away 40% of our food, but that food is also simultaneously expensive. Right? Yeah, it makes sense that the capitalist class hoards so much shelter, but simultaneously shelter is so expensive. Yeah, that makes sense, right? This sort of system and this sort of relationship with one another simply can't persist. And it won't persist because the society is in fact eating itself. And it's eating itself at the most basic level, right? It's eating itself at the most basic level, which is that we are no longer having children. Like that to me is the biggest sign that we are living in a system that is dying and that is killing itself in a deep and serious way. That we're no longer actually having children. That we are in a population decline. The reason why the death cult is interested in increasing immigration, thereby creating this narrative of, oh, well, God, so many immigrants and all that kind of stuff, is because they need to get people in to at least keep a replacement level of citizens so that we can continue doing the jobs that we currently do. Like, the boomers are about to go into a major retirement, and there's literally nobody there to help them. That, like real talk, without any hatred whatsoever. We have a major cohort of people who are about to become infirm, who are about to go into the process of death, that the natural, normal human process of death, that everybody needs help through. No doubt. It is difficult. It is hard to go through the process of aging and dying. It is a difficult thing to do, and there is nobody there to help them do it. That the very real consequences of creating this society that destroys and eats itself is going to become stark and apparent to the boomer cohort in their twilight years. That as they begin to go and touch the golden door, they will see that they've created a society that has abandoned them. That's the deep sorrow and the deep sadness of the boomer generation, is that finally, that after they've ignored all of the canaries in the coal mine, after they've ignored everybody that has said to them, this is what's going to happen, we're being abandoned, the system is eating itself, we're being abandoned. Finally, when they are their weakest, and their most vulnerable, thousands of them will see, finally, that they've been abandoned too. It's an incredible thing that's about to happen to the boomer generation. And so the power structure is responding to this in the only way that it can, which is get more people in. We've got this entire cohort of people. We need people in here to take care of these people. How do we do that? Immigration. Oh, God, there's a housing crisis. Oh, God, there's a food crisis. What do you think's going to happen? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Well, you think that these white rural Canadians are going to just sit there and allow that to happen and just watch that happen? Right? They're already saying go after the immigrants. They're already doing that. So things are getting very serious. Bread cultist, crow guy, absolutely good to see, 1,000%. Well, I think the boomers are just a product of their time and a product of the situation. That it has finally gotten to the point, and I think that this is true, where this whole narrative, and it was the boomers doing it, this whole narrative of get a better job, right? You just need to re-educate, all that kind of stuff. It's finally stopped. It has finally stopped. Because you have to be like an outrageous psychopath to believe that in this moment, when housing prices are where they're at, when things are as they are, that this is an individual issue. Like, you've got to be like a detached psycho. And so you see it every so often, because there are detached psychos, but for the bulk of the population, most people have shifted over to fuck Trudeau, right? That's where most people have gone now. That, oh, this is a liberal problem. Certainly has nothing to do with the system of capital itself, right? No, the system of capital itself is perfect, right? It's this one guy who is, in fact, himself a communist. He himself is also a communist, don't you know? Right? This kind of detachment. I still have boomers telling me that we should get a trade job. Yeah, but now it's like trade job, right? Like, it used to be like doctor, lawyer, engineer, and now it's literally like anything that turns any widget, right? Anything that turns any widget. Meanwhile, homelessness in Canada has reached a humanitarian crisis level. experts warn. Many Canadians, especially renters, are closer to homelessness than they might imagine. Increasingly, since the pandemic, in cities across the country, more and more people are choosing's doing heavy lifting in that sentence, to live in a tent, often out of necessity, because they feel unsafe in overcrowded shelters, or they're turned away because shelters are at capacity. Encampments have become a regular fixture in parks and sometimes on city streets, as more and more people face rapidly increasing rents and fewer options. According to Kathy Crow, a longtime street nurse working with unhoused populations, one major factor in the housing shortage was a program the federal government canceled in 1993. Canada had funded 20,000 new units of social housing each year up to that point, but since the program was cut, Crow said the country has seen a 30-year deficit of new affordable housing, which has resulted in chronically long wait lists to access housing. She's seen the toll of this crisis firsthand. Each month, she witnesses between 10 and 16 names added to Toronto's memorial for people who have died while living unhoused. We have people literally dying on the street in every season of the year, said Crow. An escalating national crisis. In 2021, about 235,000 Canadians experienced homelessness. Statistics Canada estimates a number that experts say is likely to grow due to increasing pressures of rising inflation, massive rent increases, stagnant wages, and a growing influx of refugees seeking asylum from climate disasters and conflict. A 2023 study from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found that the hourly wage for a 40-hour work week that is needed to afford rent in every province far exceeds the minimum wage. The CCPA also found that almost half of all Canadians are less than $200 away from bankruptcy. None of this is new. In 2007, the UN's Human Rights Council sent a special rapporteur to Canada to examine housing and homelessness, who called it a national crisis that caused a large number of deaths. And as Crow points out, experts even declared the crisis a state of emergency and a man-made social welfare disaster in 1998. The CCPA researchers point to a number of factors currently exacerbating the crisis and pushing people onto the street, including provincial legislation, such as Ontario's 2018 move to remove rent control for new units, and more recently, Quebec's attempt to end lease transfers. Once unhoused, people often face multiple social and economic barriers to return to stable housing. People who receive income assistance and disability payments may have trouble getting their money without a fixed address, and the payment may not be enough for them to afford the rising cost of rent in their area. Living unhoused can also make life more difficult for those working to hold down or secure a job, particularly due to the stigma it can carry. Since the violent police raids on Toronto encampments during the pandemic, only 8% of those evicted have since made it into permanent housing, the CBC reports. The vast majority continue to be shuffled through a broken system with a severe shortage of affordable rental homes. In search of solutions to save lives. Khalil Sevrite is a carpenter who builds tiny home shelters for people experiencing homelessness in Toronto. He was forced to stop when the City of Toronto filed a court injunction against him. Sevrite's Toronto tiny shelters are small, insulated dwellings meant to keep people living outside warm through the winter. He was recently featured in the documentary Someone Lives Here, directed by Zach Russell, and won the top prize at Hot Docs Film Festival earlier this year. From his experience working with this community and having experienced homelessness himself, he says it is often a cascade of emergency situations that lead to someone becoming homeless. Sevrite says that many Canadians, especially renters, are closer to homelessness than they might imagine. It's actually shocking how close I think a lot of people are to being homeless, but don't feel that way because you've always been able to pay your rent, he said. As soon as you stop being able to do that, you get into a cycle where it becomes harder and harder to get that back into place. Brian Cleary, a former unhoused advocate for the homeless community in Toronto, says that Canada's response to homelessness has been woefully inadequate. In Toronto alone, He says that there are at least 2,000 more people experiencing homelessness each night than the shelter system has capacity to house. Without housing, Cleary said, people cannot even begin to recover from the situation that made them homeless in the first place, along with any trauma they've taken on while living unhoused. It's a system that grinds you down and wears you out, he said. Currently, Cleary says that support for people experiencing homelessness in Canada is not providing a consistent, stable foothold for people to move beyond the shelter system. He has seen friends who attained affordable housing move beyond struggling to access basic necessities and completely bloom. However, Cleary says that there isn't enough affordable housing in Canada for everyone to have this opportunity. Vicky Sturgiopoulos, a clinician scientist at the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health, said it's time for Canada to take notice of other countries' efforts to end homelessness. Having seen Canada fail to manage homelessness, let alone end it, it would be high time that we looked at countries who have done a better job and try to see what lessons can be learned, she said, looking beyond Canada's borders. Advocates of a policy that prioritizes providing affordable, permanent housing and support to people experiencing homelessness say that it could be possible to drastically decrease the number of people struggling with housing security. The strategy, called Housing First, has been credited with reducing the number of people experiencing homelessness within several European nations that have adopted it nationally. Housing First provides long-term, affordable housing to those experiencing chronic homelessness, along with an additional support network to prevent them from becoming homeless again. According to advocates on the ground, Canada's current approach to eliminating homelessness has fallen short of addressing the deeper need faced by unhoused Canadians: affordability, stable housing. Housing experts say now might be the time to give widespread implementation of Housing First a chance by investing in the creation of new, affordable, long-term homes and support networks for people experiencing homelessness. The cost of housing, as we all know, has gone up steadily, and that makes many more people vulnerable, said Stephen Gates, President and CEO of the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. Trish and regional programs throughout Canada have modeled some success from this policy at tackling chronic homelessness. Most notably, a national study by Homeless Hub at Home Chez Soi examined Housing First programs in 5 Canadian cities: Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, Montreal, and Moncton. The world's largest Housing First trial at the time. But there are numerous political and structural hurdles that experts say we would have to be summited to make a long-term, coordinated national program possible in the country. For deeper results to be seen, Samara Jones, coordinator of the Housing First Europe Hub, feels Canada will need to follow the lead of several major European countries and implement a more widespread Housing First plan. How does Housing First work? A core belief behind this policy, according to a 2013 report by the Canada Homeless Research Network, is that giving people housing enables them to be more successful in moving forward in their lives. Residents pay a subsidized rent within the means of their income or social assistant programs. Often these programs transition into housing, along with mental health and addictions treatment. Gates said that while Canadians might stress over what this policy would cost them, between funding new subsidized housing units and social supports for residents, it would actually save taxpayer money in the long term. A 2019 study by CAMH and St. Michael's Hospital found that for every $10 spent on Housing First programs, $9.60 was saved in the long term. The study, which focused on the Housing First programs in 5 Canadian cities, also observed a significant increase in long-term housing stability. Housing First program members maintained stable housing 85% of the time over a year, compared to 60% for those navigating traditional housing and treatment services. You know, man, honestly, like, on and on it goes. I gotta tell you, like, remember a time when my dad's generation was growing up? The narrative was, if you build it, they will come. Right, you guys remember this show? You remember this movie? What was the name of that movie? I can't even remember. If you build it, they will come. Where he builds the baseball diamond, then a bunch of guys show up. Right, it really spoke to the boomer ethos that existed. Right, We built the interstate highway system. We expected people to come, right? If you build it, they will come. And now the motto is, how are you going to pay for that? That's the motto. Things have changed. Field of Dreams. Thank you, Ashton. I appreciate that, my man. Field of Dreams. That if you build it, they will come. That was basically how my dad thought about his own business. It was basically how all these boomers thought about everything. Yeah, you just built it, and then people would use it, right? You don't wait for people to begin driving in fields. You build a road, and then people will use the road because it's there. That whole ethos is gone. It's completely gone. Everything is now how are you going to pay for that? And while completely ignoring the reality that, well, how are you going to pay for that? The thing pays for itself. The thing pays for itself. It's the same thing that's going on in the healthcare conversation down in the United States. How are you going to pay for that? What are you talking about? We already pay for it. We pay more than it would cost to run it the other direction. We're paying more than it would cost to just have a single payer system. And yet it just doesn't seem to sink in. It just doesn't seem to play in people's minds that if you build it, it will get used. If you build it, they will come. We've lost the narrative. We've lost the thread as a people. And instead, we're just doubling down on this weird idea that what matters more than anything else, those weird little pieces of paper and money, like numbers on screens. It's just ridiculous what we're doing, and we're having like mental constipation about it. Yep. Bread Cultist says, well, it worked for them, and back in their day, what the mainstream media told you was all the information you could get. Yeah. The gatekeepers and all of this. Well, and also they are the primary beneficiaries of the New Deal, right? Like for all of this bootstrapping narrative that the boomers like to shit all over us, they're the primary beneficiary of a major government investment. That's the hard truth that these boomers are being absolutely deluded about. That the New Deal was an enormous government program that they 100% benefited from, and they're telling us all that we need to bootstrap while simultaneously dismantling the New Deal. It's shocking. Mikhail says, I think the new thing is becoming, if you're poor, just find someone better off than you and be nice to them. Yeah. Yet they created a society that can't afford to send them to the hereafter comfortably. Yep. This is what I mean. Like, this is what I'm talking about, is that the boomers are going to learn the lesson late, right? They're going to learn the lesson late, and they're going to try to complain to us about it, and we're not going to be nice to them. That's just the simple truth. Like, I will probably be the nicest person, right? Like, there's the hard truth of it, is that when the boomers finally start actually complaining and actually writing things and actually talking out there, I'm going to be the guy that's going to look at them and be like, but you guys are the ones that did this. Like, and I'm going to say it like that. I'm going to try to be nice to them, but like, oh no, it's the consequences of my own actions. Oh no, I defunded all of these systems and impoverished everyone, and now that I've been abandoned. Yeah. Like, 1 + 1 = 2, guys. Like, we've been telling you the whole fucking time. I've been telling you for 20 years now. Since the moment that I had, like, the kind of cognizant awareness, even when I was a fundamentalist Christian, I was saying this kind of shit. I was just like, look, if you make everybody poor, nobody's going to be able to take care of you when you're old. Like, it's just how it's going to go. And it looks like they're just doubling down on it and just being like, yeah, we'll just get poor. And there's going to be a small group of capitalist vampires who put together some kind of healthcare package in order to siphon out as much wealth as they possibly can from these infirm, dying boomers so that they won't be able to leave anything behind to their own kids, who they don't really care about. We're just trophies to them. And that'll be that. And the rest of them will just go die, right? Because this is the system they've created. That it'll just be cheaper to do medically assisted dying. Man, that's what's coming for them. Like, what do you think MAID is for? Isaac says, we can bring as many low-income worker immigrants as we want, but I don't think that will do it. How much taxes can you collect from a low-income individual? Yeah. And also, like, there is a narrative that's beginning. I've been seeing it more and more and more, that you're getting these new immigrants come in, and they spend a little bit of time here, and they're like, oh, no, this is all bullshit. The whole propaganda idea of, like, come here, and this is great, this is the land of the free, and there's opportunity here and all this. These guys are basically turning into, like, DoorDash people, right? They're just turning into basic servants, right? And many of them are turning around and saying, no, big mistake, get out of here, go home, right? Like, so the people that we end up getting, right, are probably the most desperate people. And the capitalists are fine with that, right? The capitalists are completely fine with that. That they go into a country, they destroy that country, and they extract not just its resources, but its most desperate people. And those people come here, and they compete to drive down the wages, which is the goal. Right, that's the reason why there's a temporary foreign workers program. It's the reason why we bend over backwards to try to get these people in here, because we want to make sure that we can drive wages down. That's the whole point. A boy in a shopping cart. Good to see you, my man. I think they are replacing the U.S. population with immigrants because we demand better, and the death cult refuses to pay up. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Freakland is from University Rosedale. She told Olivia Chow to get lost when Chow asked for a bailout for Toronto. Now she's going to raise taxes on the middle and poor. Yeah. Well, and you can see, like, there's an interesting conversation happening in the United States, which is the conversation between California and Texas, right? That there's this narrative coming out where it's like businesses moved to Texas because of the harsh government regulations that was coming from California, right? And this is the system of abandonment, that capital flees from states that actually think and say, oh, hey, we should start actually trying to care for our populace, that there's a crisis going on. We should actually start caring for our populace. And the only way that we can do that is if we all chip in. And that includes businesses, right? And so when the businesses experience 1 penny of taxation, they cry foul because taxes are theft, and they leave. And where they go? Texas. So, because Texas has, like, literally none of this. And so all of this money is flowing into Texas, but it's abandoning the rest of the states. And so, for a moment, the Texans will be like, yeah, the secret to all of this is to lower all the taxes and all this kind of stuff. But then the problems that capital creates will begin to appear in Texas. And the cycle will repeat. And then Texas will eventually become the place that capital abandoned, because that's what capital does. It goes to an area, it extracts as much wealth as it possibly can until it can't extract any more wealth, or it becomes more profitable to extract wealth elsewhere, and then they move to that area and extract it. Yep. And Watson's correct to point out, Texas, where the free market could not provide electricity a few years ago when it got really cold. Exactly. Ashton writes, 111 billion is the medical debt amount in the U.S. Realistically, 40 to 75% will never be paid. So this debt is costing Americans money to be serviced. Socialized medicine is superior, yet not even liberal. Ashton writes, I tell boomers as a gay man, I don't want to live in a geriatric religious theocracy defined by conservative politics. I told my mom I won't be taking care of her. She was a conservative. Well, and I mean, we are, guys, like, here's something to get ready for. Get ready for it. We are going to experience what it is like living in a society that has gone completely demented. Like, the largest cohort of people, still the boomers, right? The elderly are usually the ones that vote more than the young. That's just historically the truth. And we are going to really see what, like, a demented society looks like. It's already happening. Take a look at Biden. Now imagine if the people who were actually making the decisions were all Bidens, right? Imagine if a guy like Biden was actually the guy being like, we're going to say this to the Putin and to the Russians, right? Like, And you don't need to like look too hard to find these guys. A guy like John Bolton is just nuts. He's just an absolute lunatic. Well, imagine what happens when he just literally has dementia. Like, and this is where we're going. It's like it's a gerontocracy, where the people who are making the decisions are the ones that are least capable to do so. Yeah, 1/3 of immigrants to Canada go somewhere else. Like, it's really not a solution. Like, not in a system like this, not in a system that's about extraction and exploitation, right? It just doesn't work. Like, how do you make this work? How do you square this circle? You're a new immigrant. You're moving into Canada. Average rent, $2,000. Like, how do you square the circle? Doesn't work. Overall, they pay more taxes in Texas, property sales tax. Well, probably not if you're a corporation, right? Ashton writes, I invited my brother to this chat. That's very nice, Ashton. I appreciate that a lot, my man. Tell people I exist, man. That's how it's going to go. That's how it's going to go. That's how we spread the good word of the Canadian commie. Doing the Lord's work out there, Ashton. Because I feel a lot better asking you guys to like tell people I exist than to be like, and if you want me to continue spreading the good gospel of Jesus Christ, you be sure to send $1 to the address down below. You know, that's how I feel every time I ask for money. I'm just like, I just feel like I'm kind of hawking. Oh, Space Orc, you've been listening this whole time, Space Orc. I appreciate you, bud. Thank you so much. Doesn't inflation make it a rule that prices, including rent, go up? The people who are raising prices are the corporate are the corporate owners. So Galen Weston here in Canada, the owner of Loblaws, he's one of the top 5 wealthiest people in Canada, right? Well, we know that these guys are bragging to one another about how corporate profits are through the roof, right? And the word inflation is just the code word they're using to cover up this gouging that they're doing. Corporate profits are higher than they've ever been, while simultaneously inflation, quote-unquote inflation, is going through the roof. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's actually happening, right? It's not inflation. It's price gouging. Like, maybe there's a small amount of inflation going on. Maybe there is a certain degree of inflation happening, right? But not to account for what we're experiencing. Like, it's absolutely it's absolutely nuts what we're doing. It's absolutely crazy what we're experiencing. And the inflation argument only makes sense if it was affecting the very wealthy at the same scale that it was hitting everybody else, right? Like if the corporate profiteers were also saying like, ooh, yeah, the margins are tight and things getting, inflation, it's kind of a thing. We got, sure, prices are going up, but we got to make those things work. That's not what's happening. Their profits have been higher than ever. Their profits are higher than ever. So so this whole narrative that oh well, it's the fault. It's this magical, nebulous force out there in the world that's just like, it's just money is going in a thing and inflation is happening, like it's a natural phenomenon, like it's like El Nino, right? Like El Nino happened, guys, so we got to account for El Nino. That's how they're talking about inflation. That's not what's happening. They're raising prices to get more money from us because it's a system of extraction. And the moment that we can't pay the price, you know what they're going to do? They're going to fucking abandon us. That's the system. That's how it works. That's how it's structured. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. That's the entire history of capital. And if they could get away with tripling the price, they'd do it. Right? They'd do it in a heartbeat. But they're aware that they've got to prevent a revolution. They're aware that people could just walk out into the streets. So they got to do it very delicately, right? They got to pick your pocket so smoothly that you don't even know they're doing it. And if you just buy into this idea that it's like, oh yeah, it's the magical force of like it's like the wind blowing or the sun rising, inflation. Yep. Want to see a society in decay? Employed people living in tents. Watson, the moment when COVID happened, when COVID was happening, I can tell you the exact moment that I finally turned the corner and decided that this society was going to fall. The moment was very simply, COVID was getting into the long-term care homes, and there was an investigation done by the military on this because they were confused. They were just like, how is COVID even getting into the long-term care homes? And so they went into the private long-term care homes, and they found that the people who were working in the long-term care homes were living in the shelter system. When I heard that, that was the moment that I went, the society is going to collapse. We are not going to recover. We are not going to recover. That we have lost the plot. We have lost the point. The entire point of having a civilization or a society or anything is to ensure that everything is easier and taken care of for everybody. That's the entire point. And if you're genuinely telling me that our elderly are being taken care of by people who don't earn enough to actually have a place to live and have to go live in shelters, we are a fallen society. And it's already happening. It's already happening. Watson says, the beard game off the charts. Maybe an attempt at the Frederick Engels version. I'm just going to let it happen, man. I'm not going to trim this thing. I'm just going to let it do what it wants to do. We're going to come out the other side of it. We're on a magical journey together, right? This is how you know. I said it before, I'll say it again. This is how you know that I'm a serious communist. Now, we got serious communism happening in here, guys, right? No, none of this bullshit communism. None of this socialism. None of this democratic socialism or any of that kind of stuff. Full, hardcore, hard-nosed communism. That's how you know. That's how you know we're serious. We're going to take a turn into international politics here very shortly. Don't you know that it isn't price gouging? It's money printing. I mean, it is money print. Like, it's not just one thing, right? Like, there are many ways to have inflation occur, and money printing is one of them. It's not exclusively the only thing. And it's just there hasn't been enough, like, we have a, like, $1 trillion economy here in Canada. I forget what the actual number is, but you get up into, like, the trillions of dollars. Like, you get up into that kind of number, right? If you print, like, $200 billion, it's not going to increase inflation by a factor of, like, 300%. It's not going to do that. You're not going to have, like, 10% inflation month over month. It's not going to work that way, right? Like, and also the inflation hasn't been equal. It hasn't been even. To make money printing inflation make sense, it has to be even, right? Well, not even, but it needs to be more even than this. That it's been select industries that have experienced more inflation than other industries. Not shockingly, things like food have had a big inflationary moment because the psychopaths that own the system understand that, I could just jack prices. Everyone needs to eat. They're not going to not eat, right? Mikhail writes, I also think it would make sense that some inflation is intentional as a hedge against deflationary recession. Yeah, I mean, like, just extract more wealth while you can. Yeah, monetary policy is closer to the issue. Remember, monetary policy was a right-wing alternative pitch to the New Deal. Unfortunately, monetary policy doesn't keep people engaged or included with capitalism, yeah. Two things are required for an inflationary scenario: excess money in the system, excessive velocity of that money in the system. Who got all the money in April? Yeah. In Hamilton last week, a private company building tiny homes for $100,000 a pop is attempting to get permits to alleviate the homeless situation. Ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. There's a pecking order in the leftist beard game. One, Engels, highbrow. Marx, a little ragged. And Bakunin, looks like an insane meth head. Look, man, I'm just going for like communist wizard. That's really what I'm doing here. I'm hoping that I will carve out my own slot. Right, my own place, that people will like. I genuinely think that if things keep going the way they're going, dude, this is going straight wizard. It's going straight wizard. I didn't think it was gonna get this long, for real. Like I thought that it was gonna stop at like Marx level. It's not. It's still going. I don't know when it's gonna stop. I think we're going into straight Gandalf territory here, my guy. So we're gonna see how this is gonna go. I'm just gonna let it happen. Just going to let it happen. You need a pointy hat then? Nah. I just need a big brimmed hat. The point falls over is what is the thing. Keep in mind that 90% of all money is digital. Banks are the number one contributor. Yeah, I can't wait until all of our money is digital and then we have like a big power outage that wipes everything out. That's going to be great. It's super, super smart of us to burn fossil fuels so that we can have fake numbers. Super smart. We're a super smart people, right? Let's dig up the corpses of our ancestors in order to put them through an alchemical process so that we can pour the potion that we create from the alchemical process into infernal machines to spew the dead into the atmosphere so that we can play with monopoly money. That's what we're up to. That's what we do here in the West because we are super duper duper fucking smart. No other people in the history of humanity have been smarter than us. That we are the smartest people alive and the best. Nobody's been better than this, right? Who else would burn the corpses of their ancestors to play with monopoly money? Right? Super smart. And my favorite part about the creating the monopoly money system is that we're replacing a system of hard currency so that the owners of the currency can keep better track of us. That's the whole rationale behind why this happens. That they want to create the monopoly money and keep it digital so that they can spy on us and observe what we're doing with the currency and keep track of it. And they're very upfront about that. We're going to have an online ledger. We're going to have an online ledger so that every single itsy-bitsy tiny little transaction that ever happens can be tracked and we can hold it against you. Like they're telling you that. And then they'll start saying things like, well, there are credible institutions and there are uncredible institutions. And so there are some people that we're just going to make sure are not part that you simply can't trade from. And you know what? Why don't we take a chip and install it under your skin? We'll call it the mark of the beast 666. Straight up. Who is the better communist, Gandalf or Dumbledore? Gandalf. Dumbledore is a slaver. He owns slaves. He maintains a system of slavery, in fact, that the system that Dumbledore was fighting for was, in fact, basically liberalism. And, don't get me wrong, Dumbledore was kind of a cool guy, but he was basically just a liberal. So, F Dumbledore. Meanwhile, Gandalf was literally organizing. Gandalf was a uniter, right? Dumbledore's whole thing was to sacrifice a child to Voldemort. That was his whole thing, right? We have a prophecy about the chosen child who is going to defeat the Dark Wizard Voldemort. Right? And likely die in the process. So I'm going to make sure that happens. right? Do some dark evil shit for the greater good, right? Basic liberalism. Pretty sure, we had to murder 100,000 native people, but they're better off. For the greater good is essentially Dumbledore's whole pitch. For the greater good. Meanwhile, Gandalf's basically went across Middle-earth, united entire races of people together under a single banner to fight against, like, the Dark Lord Sauron, in straight up, like, outright combat. Oh yeah, dude, I think about this stuff. This is the shit I think about. See, people don't expect these kinds of answers because people are so used to just Marvel garbage. You're so used to just garbage, basically, that when somebody actually looks at this stuff and says, oh yeah, we should actually know something about this and think about it. And like, what does this art actually say about us? Man, isn't it interesting that essentially the justification of Iron Man is that there is this unspecified alien threat that's going to invade at any moment, and now suddenly aliens are real, guys. Have you noticed how suddenly aliens are real? Yeah, you need to stop paying attention to what's going on around you, and you need to cling on to the powerful because they're going to protect you from the external alien threat that definitely exists. Don't know much about Harry Potter, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, like, come on, the house elves are slaves. Like, they're straight up slaves. Like, they could free them at any time. There's even a mechanism by which they can be freed, right? You just have to give them a piece of your clothing. That's it. Every house elf could be freed today if the wizards just went, here's a sock, right? That's it. Jesus was a communist wizard. Yes, that's right. Watson, I do engage in it because I think it is important for us to understand why we are attracted to certain types of media. Why are we attracted to certain types of media and not other types of media? What is it about this media that makes us go, oh, interesting, oh wow, oh wow. What is it that sends us down that path? And we should really think critically about what is the stuff that we are consuming. Like, if you actually stop and think about these Marvel movies, they're proto-fascist for all the way. Like, they're totally proto-fascist. Broccoli cheddar rice, good to see you. Digital currency would also enable them to put an expiration date on it to make sure you spend, to make sure you work. Oh yeah, I hadn't actually considered that, broccoli cheddar rice. That's a really good point. There's so many things that they could mess around with, right? Digitizing the currency is a terrible idea. It's a terrible, terrible idea. And nobody seems to actually be saying that out loud. Everybody just seems entranced by it. Everybody's just like, wow, what a neat idea. But the more you think about it, the more you're just like, oh yeah, this is a fucking bad idea. It's a waste of energy. It's literally a waste of resources. And all it's doing is empowering psychopaths in the society and making it so that the psychopaths can get more involved in our shit, right? And what blows me away the most is that it's like the conservative type people who are like, anti-government. I don't want those government hands on my Medicare kind of people. I'm like, but you want them to know literally every single financial transaction you make. You want them to know how exactly and precisely how you spend every single penny of every single dollar. You sure about that? Like, you sure about that, champ? You sure you want that in your life? Have I ever tried braiding my beard? I tried once, actually. I've never braided anything, so I don't really know how that would go, so to speak. If it gets any longer than this, I think that would be successful. I honestly, guys, don't get married to the idea that I'm going to be braiding this thing. I just think it's a pain in the ass. I think that's what it comes down to. I don't have a lot of patience for finicky, like, kind of pain in the ass sort of stuff. And it just seems like that would be a real finicky pain in the ass. So it's the central banks controlled by a certain ethnic group crowd that loves cryptocurrency. Yeah, isn't that interesting how that works, Watson? Braid it, dye it green. So, I've had this up on the screen for a little while. Exclusive. Majority of Ukrainians mistrust NATO and EU. 71% of the respondents said NATO and the EU only follow their own interests and simply use Ukraine for their own purposes. 71%. A Ukrainian public opinion survey provided exclusively to the European Conservative regarding attitudes towards the ongoing conflict with Russia has revealed that while Ukrainians are hopeful for the future, a majority have deep mistrust of the motivations of the NATO military alliance and the European Union. The survey was carried out by phone from July 25th to 27 in all regions of Ukraine that are currently unoccupied by Russian forces, and found that the vast majority of Ukrainians over the age of 18, 84%, were positive and hopeful for the future of their country. However, regarding the NATO military alliance and the EU, 71% of the respondents said NATO and the EU only follow their own interests and simply use Ukraine for their own purposes. A total of 61% said they think NATO and the EU only support Ukraine because the situation is profitable for them, and believe that NATO and the EU may engage in secret negotiations with Russia. Just 29% of respondents believe Ukraine will join NATO within the next year. While around half the respondents believe that the war with Russia will end by 2024, a majority are not confident regarding the aftermath of the conflict. Over half, 56%, say they believe that Ukraine will be indebted to the West for the supply of weapons and other forms of assistance granted during the war. In terms of individual countries, Ukrainians have a very positive view of their neighbor Poland, which has been a staunch ally of Ukraine throughout the war, but has recently somewhat soured due to a recent conflict over grain exports. Marcin Przydacz, head of the Polish president... Dude, what is with these names? International Policy Office, caused controversy within Ukrainian officials after being asked about a possible extension of an existing grain import ban from Ukraine designed to help Polish farmers. Ukraine has really received a lot of support from Poland. I think it would be worth them starting to appreciate that role that Poland has played for Ukraine in the recent months and years. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal criticized Poland for continuing the grain ban, saying Russia has disrupted the grain initiative, destroying the infrastructure of our Black Sea ports, and once again provoking a global food crisis. During this critical time, Poland intends to continue blocking the exports of UA grain to the EU. This is an unfriendly and populist move that will severely impact global food security and Ukraine's economy. Ukrainians who took part in the survey were also very positive about their view of the United Kingdom and the United States, with 81% believing both countries to be trusted allies. Wow. So just when I think these guys aren't suckers. The greatest personal fear for Ukrainians regarding the Russian invasion is being evicted from the country and sent somewhere in the Russian periphery, such as Siberia. A majority of 57% stated they believe the war between Ukraine and Russia could not have been avoided, although those from the eastern parts of Ukraine were more optimistic that the conflict could have been prevented. While Ukrainian trust in NATO and the EU is low, another survey from last week revealed that the majority of Americans are now in opposition to sending more aid to Ukraine. A CNN poll conducted by SSRS found that 56% of Americans oppose further aid to Ukraine to fight the war against Russia, and 51% stated that their country had already done enough to help Ukraine battle Russian forces. Ukrainians appear to be war-weary as well, as a scandal emerged earlier this month, with claims that the head of an enlistment office in Odessa was arrested for taking in as much as 4.6 million euros in bribes in order to declare men unfit for military service. Yevhen Borisov was arrested by Ukrainian authorities after 2 days on the run and is believed to have charged men as much as 9,000 euros each to state on their official documents that they were unfit for active combat service. Authorities became suspicious when Borisov's mother was able to buy €3.7 million home in Spain in 2022. Borisov himself makes just €1,500 per month from his official salary, and his mother has only made around €100,000 in the last 20 years. Borisov's case may not be unique either, as the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has claimed that there are 106 ongoing investigations into conscription offices, and so far, 21 employees have been declared suspicious, and employees in several regions have already been arrested. in connection with taking bribes. So a mix of information there. I think the most surprising thing for me out of that is that Ukrainians are like, yeah, the U.S., they're awesome. Yeah. But that's just it, Watson. You sort of, like, you expect them to be like NATO bad, but like U.S. good. So how's that work? Right? Yeah, way too many consonants and not enough vowels in those Eastern European names. But I bet you they think the same of us. They're just like, what's with all these vowels? So lame. So lame. In other news, not shockingly, discrimination against Chinese people in Canada nearly doubled between 2014 and 2019 from StatCan. 29% of Chinese people in Canada said they experienced discrimination or unfair treatment in their daily lives. Really think about that. That's a crazy stat, right? In 2019, 29%, so 30%, one in four at least, Chinese people in Canada said they experienced discrimination or unfair treatment in their daily lives. Every day. Yeah, staying the hell away from small-town Ontario. No kidding. A Jurastat article newly published by Stats Canada this week highlights that a number of Chinese people in Canada who said they were experiencing discrimination nearly doubled in 2014, between 2014 and 2019. It's almost as though there has been a systemic demonization of China. It's almost as though Chinese propaganda against China has a negative impact on how people view Chinese Canadian citizens. It's almost like that's how that works. That if you spend a lot of money demonizing a group of people, then people will start to treat those people badly. Isn't that shocking? Yeah, I only hate the government, not the peoples, though. Yeah. The article analyzed data from the General Social Survey on Canadian safety, which showed that in 2019, 29% of Chinese people in Canada said they experienced discrimination or unfair treatment in their daily lives at some point during the preceding 5 years. While that figure is similar to those reported by other racialized groups, it is represented nearly double the figure recorded in 2014, when 16% of Chinese people in Canada reported experiencing discrimination or unfair treatment in the previous 5 years. This rise was greater than the increases reported by other racialized groups. In 2021, approximately 4.7% of Canada's population, about 1.7 million people, identified as Chinese. Shauna Conroy, the author of the Justacart article, noted Canada's long track record of anti-Asian racism. She noted, yellow peril ideology considered individuals from Asian countries and those of Asian descent as a threat to Western society. In Canada, long-standing and widespread anti-Chinese racism culminated in exclusionary immigration policies. Of those Chinese people who reported being discriminated against in 2019, 22% said it was on the basis of race or skin color, while 17% said it was on the basis of ethnicity or culture, and 11% said it was on the basis of language. Just absolutely like, while a large majority of Chinese respondents to the CGSS survey reported having confidence in the police, the number decreased from 92% in 2014 to 85%. Only 28% of Chinese respondents said they thought the police do a good job of treating people fairly, and just 25% said they felt the police do a good job of ensuring the safety of citizens. Notably, a minority of respondents, 40%, said they have confidence in Canadian media. That figure is 9% lower than it is amongst other racialized groups. Wild. Like, yeah. Adam writes, if we live in a highly bigoted society, 30% of women cite gender as a reason for day-to-day discrimination. Psychology Today. And unfortunately, many Chinese are still ditzy and naive to this increase in racism. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people just kind of want to get on with their lives, you know? That if it's not affecting them, if it's not something they have to deal with directly, right? Then it's not something that they have to it's not something that they have to really confront, you know? Meanwhile, from the Malaysia Sun, Ukraine will be like Israel. Zelensky. This was published August 28th. The U.S. will provide long-term military aid to Kiev, similar to the type of support that Washington extends to Israel, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has claimed. A potential leadership change in the White House would not affect that commitment, the Ukrainian leader insisted. During a TV interview on Sunday, Zelensky outlined the security guarantees that Ukraine is seeking from the U.S. and its allies on a path to NATO. Leaders of the U.S.-led military bloc failed to offer Ukraine a roadmap to membership at a summit in Lithuania last month, although G7 nations promised continued assistance. We will definitely have an Israeli model, the one which has weapons, technology, training, funding, etc., rounding up minority groups, keeping them in camps. Israel has been the biggest recipient of U.S. foreign military aid since World War II, although annual allocations for Ukraine have surpassed those offered to West Jerusalem since hostilities between Moscow and Kiev erupted last year. The Middle Eastern nation is not part of NATO, meaning members of the bloc are not legally obligated to come to its defense in the event of attack. Washington, however, has described its commitments to Israeli security as ironclad. When asked by interviewer Natalia Mozyechuk if Western security guarantees to Ukraine would survive a possible change of leadership in Washington, Zelensky was adamant that they would. Those are things that are voted for in the U.S. Congress, he said, adding that a similar agreement with European countries would likewise be ratified by their national legislatures. Leadership changes in the U.S. have previously resulted in Washington abandoning international commitments. The administration of former President Donald Trump infamously pulled out of the JCPOA, an international agreement on Iran's nuclear industry, which was widely considered a major diplomatic achievement under Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. Western media have suggested in recent weeks that the U.S. will not sustain its current level of support for Kiev next year, when Democratic leader Biden will be fighting for a second presidential term. Several Republican candidates have called for aid to Ukraine to be scrapped altogether, or at least reduced and subjected to stronger scrutiny. The list of critics includes Trump, who currently leads the race for the Republican nomination, according to opinion polls. I just love that Zelensky keeps saying that he wants Ukraine to be like the Israeli model, that they're going to do, do they not see what's happening to the Palestinians in Israel? Do they not see how this could be interpreted in this sort of dim light that we could very much easily interpret what he's saying as, yeah, what we did to the ethnic Russians was great. That's what we should be doing to these ethnic Russians, right? We should be putting them in little camps, right? We should be letting death squads just snipe them from towers. What a wild world we live in. What a wild place we're living in, where the people of the country are struggling. The people of the country are struggling with the day-to-day. That rent has gone up, food has gone up, homelessness is spreading. And yet we just seem to have infinite amounts of money for war. We just seem to have infinite amounts of money for war, to just destroy nations, destroy countries, to pit former allies against one another, to pit brother against brother, father against son, cousins against cousins. And it's always amazing to me that when it comes to putting another $50 billion into the hands of weapons contractors, We just have we just have an insatiable appetite for it. But when it comes to ensuring that every citizen has access to food and shelter, how are you going to pay for that? Suddenly the abacus comes out, and the measurements come out. Suddenly it turns into a big game of how do we actually count the beans? How do we weigh the scales? Suddenly money becomes very real and tangible. Suddenly everything needs to be extremely justified. And we need to actually attempt to justify to people why it's good for citizens of their nation to have access to food. Like, these are the same people who make fun of communist nations for having bread lines. Bread lines feed people. Like, the communists are interested in feeding people, and they'll do so however they have to. Capitalists are not interested in feeding anybody. Capitalists are interested in making profit and throwing food in the bin if it makes them more profit to do so. Like, and bringing up this Howard Zinn quote right here: give people what they need: food, medicine, clean air, pure water, trees and grass, pleasant homes to live in, some hours of work, more hours of leisure. Don't ask who deserves it. Every human being deserves it. This is bringing up a real big kind of sticking point. Something that I think is fundamentally mental about our society is that we are constantly asked to justify our existence to this capitalist death cult. We are constantly asked to prove to the society that we warrant the basics. And it's a completely inverted worldview. That what needs to be proven is the validity of a system that withholds food and shelter from the citizens. That we are actually saying out loud all the time that it's fine to kill human beings. It's fine to watch human beings die, as long as it maintains this arbitrary system that can be altered and changed at any moment for the benefit of humans. It's wild. And it's all based on this you gotta earn it idea, which is total garbage. It's a total garbage idea that doesn't actually exist. And yet, this is how we've defined our whole society. Tinker writes, Prigozhin had a fool's ego, power hungry, should have escaped to Tel Aviv, like Robin Abramovich. Yeah, I don't really get the Prigozhin narrative. Like, he retreats to Belarus. Like, bad call. Like, bad call. Like, what are you doing, bud? Belarus is essentially a Russian vassal. What are you up to? All right, guys. You know, I think I gotta close this one out early today. I've been working a lot this weekend, and I worked today. I think I gotta close this one out early. Bless each and every one of you for being here. I'll see you all tomorrow. Hey, I haven't said this in a while. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity that they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.